Welcome back, everyone, to the continuation of a story spun from shadows and shattered ideals. In Part 1, we witnessed the strongest sorcerer, Gojo Satoru, fall from grace, his heart torn between salvation and destruction. Fueled by disillusionment, he unleashed a doctrine of purity, reshaping the world with overwhelming power and harsh judgment. The battle raged, friendships fractured, and the lines between hero and villain blurred. But in the final breath of that conflict, a flicker of hope emerged. Gojo, vulnerable and uncertain, reached out for salvation in a storm of chaos. Now, in Part 2, the Sorcerer God, the fight escalates beyond power and technique. Bonds will be tested, shocking truths revealed, and the fate of sorcery itself balanced on a knife's edge. Prepare for a journey where light battles shadow, and the strongest must decide what kind of god they will become. The city was waking slowly beneath a bruised sky, with clouds drifting like swollen scars above the jagged horizon of Tokyo. The air was heavy with a mixture of ash and rain, a reminder of the recent battle that had threatened to unravel everything. Streets lay fractured, their silent emptiness echoing the aftermath of a war fought between gods and men. Tokyo Jujutsu High, once a sanctuary of hope and sorcery, now bore the weight of scars deeper than stone and flesh. Within a quiet, dimly lit infirmary tucked beneath the school's ancient stone walls, Satoru Gojo rested, his once indomitable frame fragile, stripped bare of his blinding confidence. No longer did the radiant glow of his 6 eyes command the room, instead, a fragile flicker of light struggled beneath closed lids. The sterile room was cold, its sharp white light unnatural against the fading night. The air held the faint scent of antiseptics and burned cursed energy, a stark contrast to the heat of destruction left outside. At his bedside sat Yuta Okatsu, silent yet vigilant. His dark eyes, normally fierce with determination, now reflected worry and a glimmer of hope. This wasn't just a fight against outside threats anymore. This was a battle to reclaim a soul, the soul of a man who had towered above all others. Gojo-sensei, Yuta whispered, his voice layered with unspoken fears. You fought like a god, but even gods bleed. The room's door creaked open, and Megumi Fushiguro entered quietly, followed by Nobara Kugasaki. There was a heaviness in their steps, an unyielding resolve entwined with quiet exhaustion. Nobara's voice broke the solemn silence. This place feels too quiet. Like the calm before a storm bigger than anything we've faced. Megumi nodded, his expression grim. We can't ignore what's coming. If Gojo-sensei stays like this, can he protect us? Or even himself? From the bed, Gojo's eyelids fluttered open, revealing the faintest glimmer of his 6 eyes. They were dulled, but inside burned a tempest unresolved. A soft, rueful smile barely touched his lips. Even gods fall. The question is, can they rise again? Outside, the city's life stirred, people beginning to venture from hiding, unaware the battle for their future was far from over. New dangers stirred, monsters birthed from the fractures left by Gojo's purity, shadowy forces preparing to plunge the world deeper into chaos. The fragile dawn held both hope and menace, an uncertain balance, teetering between salvation and annihilation. Inside that infirmary, the fate of a fallen god, his allies, and the world itself all hung in the balance. The story continued, not just of power, but of redemption, betrayal, and the fragile threads that bind hearts across darkness. The infirmary remained a sanctuary of uneasy calm as Gojo Satoru lay motionless on the narrow bed, framed by the faint glow of cursed talismans and the sterile white light above. Though the world beyond trembled with the aftershocks of his rebellion, within these walls, time seemed to slow to an agonizing crawl. Gojo's breath was steady, but his mind was a battlefield far more treacherous than any physical struggle he had ever endured. Memories surged like relentless waves, each one a shard of his fractured existence, reminders of power and pain, hope and despair. Faces sharp and glowing in his mind's eye, Yuji's laughter warm and untarnished, Megumi's quiet strength, Nobara's fierce fire, even those who had condemned him in hallways thick with betrayal. He saw himself once more as a boy blessed and cursed with power beyond comprehension, a protector burdened with the world's weight, yet always willing to bear that load alone. But the road had twisted, and the man who once dreamed of salvation now found himself lost in darkness he had birthed. Was I a god, or simply a man blinded by pride? He murmured, voice trembling beneath the might that still pulsed faintly beneath his skin. The memories tore at his resolve. The elders, cold judgments, the endless cycle of pain fed by humanity's sins, and the terrible choice, the path of purity, a doctrine born from desperation and wrath. Gojo's fingers spasmed, cursed energy flickering weakly like dying embers desperate to rekindle into flame. A knock on the door interrupted the silence. Yuta Okatsu entered quietly, eyes tired but filled with unwavering hope. Satoru-sensei, Yuta began softly, his voice steady yet gentle, we're still here. We're still fighting for a future where you don't have to bear the burden alone. Gojo's eyes cracked open, 6 eyes dim yet sharp enough to catch Yuta's determination. I don't know who I am anymore, Gojo whispered, vulnerability breaking through his legendary arrogance. A god capable of destruction, or a man lost in his own abyss. Yuta stepped forward, placing a firm, reassuring hand on Gojo's shoulder. Either way, Yuta said, you're not alone. The faintest smile flickered across Gojo's lips, fragile and broken yet real. Beyond the infirmary walls, a city tried to breathe again, but new threats stirred in the shadows left by purity's devastation. The fight for the sorcerer's world was far from over. Could a fallen god rise once more to light, or was Gojo's fate sealed by the darkness he had unleashed? The answer lay somewhere within the echoes of a fractured soul. The infirmary felt different today. The sterile cold was still present, but beneath that artificial chill lingered an unfamiliar warmth, a silent promise of renewal amid the quiet hum of healing spells and subdued footsteps. Gojo Satoru sat upright for the first time since the cataclysmic battle that shattered the city's heart and his own undying pride. His body, once a flawless conduit of overwhelming power, now carried the weight of wounds both seen and unseen. Muscles ached with memory, spirit trembled with the ghosts of guilt and loss. His blindfold lay discarded on a nearby table, a deliberate gesture of vulnerability and newfound resolve. His 6 eyes flickered softly as they adjusted to the light, no longer the blazing inferno of divine arrogance but a tempered flame struggling toward balance. Yuta Okatsu was the first to approach, cautious yet encouraging. You're stronger than you realize, sensei, he said, voice steady yet gentle. We're here with you. Gojo met his gaze, his voice rough but sincere. The world I sought to purify, it remains broken. But perhaps destruction isn't the only way to rebuild. Megumi Fushiguro leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable but attentive. Many will never forgive what's been done. Healing takes time, some wounds may never close. Nobara Kugasaki joined the circle, her fiery eyes softening slightly. Strength isn't just raw power. It's pushing forward when the past wants to drag you under. It's having the guts to change. Their words wove around him like a fragile shield against the shadows of regret that threatened to engulf his heart. Outside the infirmary window, dawn stretched its pale fingers over the city's battered skyline, pushing back the night one slow breath at a time. The first light filtered softly through cracked glass and shattered stone, a reminder that even the deepest darkness yields to the persistence of hope. Gojo let out a deep breath, the invisible chains loosening ever so slightly. This was the beginning, not just of recovery, but of a journey toward redemption that would demand everything from the once untouchable sorcerer. Yet beyond the fragile peace, distant rumblings stirred. Shadows born of chaos and purity's aftermath crept through the cracks he'd left behind, eager to consume what remained unguarded. The world awaited the next storm, and the god who would rise into its eye. The halls of Tokyo Jujutsu High felt heavier than ever before. Whispers of battles past and betrayals sung through the corridors like lingering curses, reminders of wounds deeper than muscle or bone. Gojo Satoru had returned, not as the invincible god the world once feared, but as a man fractured, desperate to reclaim his place amidst allies unsure whether to trust salvation or tread carefully among shadows. His first steps back into the world of sorcery were met with a mixture of hope, skepticism, and veiled resentment. For every nod of understanding, there lurked a glare of doubt. Behind every cautious smile was the weight of unspoken questions. Yuta, Nobara, and Megumi stood by Gojo's side, faces etched with both determination and the quiet pain of fractured friendships. "You're not the same," Megumi said bluntly, voice steady but not unkind. "Neither are we. What matters now is if we can move forward, together." Gojo's eyes, soft beneath his lowered gaze, met theirs. "I've carried the poison of my decisions far too long," he admitted. "But if I am to rebuild, I must face those of hurt. No more hiding behind power." Their mission extended beyond healing the man. They had to restore the fragile web of alliances torn asunder by purity's storm. Some sorcerers welcomed the change. Others saw in Gojo's fall a threat not yet extinguished. Outside the school grounds, rumors grew of new factions rising, those who embraced chaos, seeking to fill the void left by Gojo's absence of control. The battlefield was no longer just a place of physical conflict but a maze of alliances, betrayals, and the ever-thinning thread between hope and despair. Within Gojo, the struggle was just as fierce, the war between lingering darkness and rekindling light. Every step forward demanded sacrifice, every alliance a risk. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in long years, Gojo dared to envision a dawn not born of destruction, but of rebirth. The city of Tokyo, once vibrant with life and bustling with the delicate threads of human hopes and dreams, now lay fractured and weary. The aftermath of Gojo Satoru's purity doctrine was more than just physical devastation. It had ruptured the very balance that kept curses and sorcerers in uneasy check. Beneath the broken skyline, in the damp shadows of an abandoned subway tunnel, a new power stirred. A lone figure clad in ink-black robes moved with silent purpose through the derelict passageways. His presence was almost spectral, blending with the grime-streaked walls and flickering lights. His eyes, ominously luminescent, pierced the gloom, scanning the periphery for any sign of life. Kaito Yagami had been a name whispered among underground cursed circles, once a minor sorcerer with ambitions obscured by the overwhelming presence of figures like Gojo. But with the chaos left by the purity doctrine, Kaito's power had flourished unchecked, nourished by the despair and hatred simmering in Tokyo's underbelly. His cursed technique, Phantom Dominion, was rare and terrifying. With a wave of his hand, spectral forms, spirits of the long dead and cursed, rose like shadowy puppets, their glowing eyes flickering with unnatural obedience. This command over the spirits of the fallen gave Kaito an army unlike any sorcerers before, legions from beyond the veil, bound by cursed will to enact his dark designs. Behind him followed a legion of devoted followers, each wielding corrupted cursed techniques amplified by Kaito's oppressive presence. Whispers echoed in their ranks of a coming world where the strongest would no longer protect the weak but crush them into submission. Kaito paused before a massive subway chamber etched with forgotten barriers, ancient seals designed to contain dark energies. These seals had weakened with the recent surge in chaotic cursed energy, and Kaito smiled coldly. "If the world burns," he whispered, "I will be its new lord amidst the ashes." Meanwhile, in the guarded halls of Jujutsu High, unease had seized the minds of its defenders. News of unnatural spiritual disturbances and cursed outbreaks came like waves, each more violent and unpredictable than the last. Yuta Okatsu stood at the center of a hastily called strategy meeting, his face grim beneath the flickering lantern light. "We thought purity was our greatest threat," Yuta said to the gathered sorcerers. "But now something darker rises in its wake." Megumi folded his arms, eyes narrowing. If Kaito gains control over the fractured doctrine, his phantom dominion could overwhelm us all. Nobara's expression hardened, her voice fiery with resolve. Then we can't wait. We need to strike before he becomes unstoppable. At that moment, footsteps echoed outside, and Gojo Satoru stepped into the room. His presence, though diminished from the godlike might he once wielded, carried an undeniable aura of raw power and unyielding will. The enemy thrives on chaos, Gojo began, voice steady but tinged with the weight of recent battles. But chaos can be contained, if we stand firm together. His eyes met theirs, old friends and new allies, rekindling the fragile flame of hope. We'll face this darkness as one, Gojo declared. Not as gods or villains, but as sorcerers fighting for the future. The room filled with a charged silence, a pact forged not from power alone but from shared scars and unbroken spirit. Beyond the city's battered walls, Kaito's forces amassed in the silence, shadows gathering like storms ready to break. The night waited, and so did the world. The night air was cold, thick with tension, as the sorcerers gathered on the outskirts of the city's shattered underground. A faint mist curled across broken pavement and shattered concrete, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and lingering cursed energy. This battlefield was a far cry from the familiar halls of Tokyo Jujutsu High, a darker place where shadows coiled like living things. Yuta Okatsu led the vanguard, every muscle tensed with anticipation and resolve. His cursed energy glowed faintly beneath his clothes, a silent promise of destruction and protection fused into one. Beside him, Megumi Fushiguro and Nobara Kugasaki exchanged brief nods, their eyes steeled against the dangers lurking in the darkness. Ahead, the dim glow of flickering lights revealed the shattered entrance to Kaito Yagami's stronghold. The ancient seals had been broken, their protective runes cracked and faint. From within, spectral forms flickered like torches in the dark, spirits of the fallen, corralled by the dominant will of Kaito's phantom dominion. Stay close and follow my lead, Yuta whispered. This won't be an easy fight. The moment they crossed the threshold, the ground beneath them quaked. Ethereal hands clawed up from cracked stone, pale and ghostly, grasping for living flesh. Spectral voices whispered promises of despair and death. Nobara met one specter eye to eye and unleashed her cursed technique, hurling a hammer-like burst of cursed energy that shattered the phantom into oblivion. Her shout echoed through the tunnel, fierce and sharp. Megumi stepped forward with calm precision, summoning his Shikigami, 8 shadow wolves materializing like smoke. They darted forward, tearing and tearing at the ghostly foes, creating a path for the team. Yuta's cursed energy flared as he clashed with a towering specter wielding razor-like claws. Each strike was a furious hammer blow, disintegrating spirit after spirit as he pressed deeper into the labyrinth. Suddenly, a cold voice cut through the clash, smooth and lethal. So, the disciples of the fallen god finally arrive. From the shadows emerged Kaito Yagami himself, a figure cloaked in swirling cursed energy, eyes gleaming with merciless cunning. Behind him surged an army of spectral warriors, their forms shifting and flickering like dark flames. Yuta tightened his grip on his weapon. We're here to stop you, Kaito. Your reign ends tonight. Kaito smiled, a predatory curve of lips filled with cruel amusement. You don't understand. This world is a broken cage. I'm here to shatter it, and build my kingdom from the ashes. With a sweeping gesture, the spectral army surged forward, a tidal wave of shadows intent on crushing the resistance. The fight erupted anew, cursed energy igniting the darkness like lightning in a storm. Blades clashed, spells burst in radiant explosions, and every breath was a battle between light and shadow. As the battle raged, Megumi caught sight of Gojo in the distance, his mentor's weakened figure standing firm amid chaos, eyes burning with quiet fury and hope. The fate of the sorcerer's world would be decided tonight, not just by power, but by the unbreakable bonds forged in fire. The heart of the shattered tunnel echoed with the clash of cursed energies and the cries of battle. The battlefield was a tempest of blue and black, light and shadow intertwined in a deadly dance. At the center stood Gojo Satoru, his once untouchable form now marked by scars of recent trials, but his presence as commanding as ever. His 6 eyes blazed with a fierce clarity, tempered by the weight of recent pain, reflecting a resolve rekindled. Opposite him, shrouded in darkness and spectral menace, was Kaito Yagami, the Phantom Lord. His robes billowed like a storm cloud, cursed spirits swirling around him in a living armor of death. "You've clawed your way back from the abyss, Gojo," Kaito said, voice cold and mocking. "But you cannot undo what's been broken." Gojo stepped forward, energy radiating from him like the calm before a storm. "Maybe. But even broken things can be reforged stronger." Without warning, Kaito unleashed his phantom dominion in full force. Spirits surged forward, howling like banshees, claws digging into the earth and air alike. Gojo's cursed energy flared, limitless techniques unfolding with precision and grace. Space bent and curved at his will, an invisible barrier that turned phantom attacks into shattered fragments and echoes. Their powers collided with a deafening roar, Gojo's brilliant infinity against Kaito's spectral legion. As the battle intensified, Kaito's form blurred, becoming one with the ghosts he commanded. He struck with unpredictability, a phantom blade slicing through the fabric of reality, forcing Gojo to defend with every ounce of his skill. But Gojo was unyielding. He drew upon the lessons of his fall, strength tempered with humility, power bound by purpose. With a sudden burst, Gojo activated a new technique born from the fusion of his limitless and the fractured purity doctrine, resonance of redemption. A radiant pulse swept through the battlefield, cleansing corrupted spirits and unraveling Kaito's phantom dominion thread by thread. Kaito staggered, eyes wide with disbelief. "Impossible." Gojo advanced, voice low and steady. "The darkness you wield is a wound we all carry. But it's not the end." With a final strike, Gojo shattered Kaito's spectral armor, sending the Phantom Lord crashing into the shattered ground. Silence descended on the battlefield. Gojo looked down at his fallen foe and then toward his allies, exhausted but unbroken. The war was far from over, but tonight, a god reclaimed his light. The first light of dawn crept gently across the battered skyline of Tokyo, casting long shadows over ruined streets and fractured buildings that still bore the scars of one night bathed in cursed energy and destruction. The world was far from healed, each crack in concrete echoing the deeper fractures etched into the hearts of its defenders. Amidst this quiet devastation stood Gojo Satoru, his silhouette etched against the pale sky. The air around him held the faint hum of residual power, a reminder of his once limitless strength now tempered by trial and reflection. The battlefield, once a tempest of clashing cursed energies, had settled into an eerie calm. Bodies of spectral phantoms faded, their forms dissolving into mist as the curse that bound them unraveled. Survivors moved cautiously, eyes wary but filled with a flicker of relief. Gojo's gaze swept slowly over the faces of those around him. Yuta Okatsu, still clenching his fists, breathing ragged but determined. Megumi Fushiguro, his expression steady but shadowed with the gravity of their losses. And Nobara Kugisaki, standing firm, eyes blazing with unspoken resolve. Even among the injured and weary, a bond had been reforged, crystallized in the crucible of battle. Breaking the silence, Gojo's voice was low, steady, carrying both the weight of their struggles and the hint of a newfound purpose. Tonight we fought not just an enemy, but the chaos we allowed to breed in the cracks of our world. The Phantom Dominion is broken, but the wounds it exposed run deeper than any of us would like to admit. Yuta took a hesitant step forward. Kaito Yagami was only the first to rise from that darkness. There will be others, those who see opportunity in the ashes of purity's destruction. Megumi nodded, the familiar crease between his brows deepening. We'll need more than power to face them. Strategy, trust, and unity, things we've lost, and must now rebuild. Nobara placed a firm hand on Gojo's shoulder, her voice fierce yet tender. We almost lost you too, sensei. But you're here. We're still standing. That means something. Gojo allowed himself a rare, soft smile, one that reached his eyes, brimming with reluctant hope. I once believed strength alone would save us, that my power was the answer. But now, I see that it takes more. He looked toward the awakening city below, its people stirring, unaware of the invisible wars waged to protect their lives and futures. It takes heart. The courage to face the darkness within ourselves as much as outside. To rebuild what has been broken, no matter how long it takes. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying the scent of rain and renewal, rustling the torn banners and shattered glass as if nature itself acknowledged their unspoken vow. The battle was over, for now. But the war would continue in shadows and light, in hearts and minds. Gojo's gaze lingered on the horizon where the sky shifted from cold gray to warm gold, the dawn of a new chapter. The Sorcerer God, once fallen, now stood at the precipice of redemption. And the story was far from finished. The city's fragile peace held, teetering on the edge of a precipice shaped by the scars of battle and the fragile hopes of its defenders. Tokyo's skyline, once shattered and darkened, now showed signs of tentative renewal as light glinted from repaired windows and eager faces. Yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. The forces Kaito Yagami had stirred were far from extinguished, and new shadows lengthened against the backdrop of dawn. Gojo Satoru, despite his wounds and doubts, moved with renewed purpose. No longer a god fallen and cast aside, he was a man forging a new path, one lined with sacrifice and the weight of redemption. Gathered in the war room of Jujutsu High, Gojo and his allies planned their next move. Screens flickered with distant cursed activity, reports of rising threats, and fragile pockets of hope. We cannot relent, Gojo said, voice steady. This is our last horizon, the line where we stand to protect what we love, or lose everything. Yuta spoke with quiet determination. We fight not just for survival, but for a future where the next generation won't bear the burdens we do. Megumi and Nobara exchanged grim nods, their resolve echoed in unspoken words. Beyond the city, the horizon glowed red and gold. A storm was coming, fierce and unyielding. The final battle approached. A reckoning not only of powers, but of hearts. For Gojo Satoru, the journey from fallen god to savior was nearly complete. But every dawn carries its shadows. The battlefield was no longer just a place of clashing cursed energies. It had become a crucible where fate, will, and the bonds between souls would be tested to their utmost. Gojo Satoru stood at the eye of the storm, a figure radiant yet grounded, his 6 eyes blazing not with arrogance but with unwavering resolve. Around him stood his closest allies, warriors tempered by pain and hope, ready to face whatever darkness threatened the world. Opposing them surged the last remnants of Kaito's forces, a desperate tide of shadow and hatred determined to undo everything Gojo had reclaimed. The clash began with a force that shook the heavens, light and shadow torn asunder in a symphony of destruction. Gojo moved with grace born of experience, his techniques weaving between defense and devastating offense, each strike a statement of renewed purpose. Yuta, Megumi, and Nobara fought fiercely by his side, their connections deeper than any curse, a bond forged in battle and trust. In a decisive moment, Gojo unleashed resonance of redemption, a technique born from the fusion of his limitless abilities and the lessons of his painful past. Waves of purifying energy cascaded over the battlefield, unraveling curses while healing the wounds in their hearts. Kaito Yagami, leader of the Phantom Dominion, was finally brought to his knees, the ghosts that once followed him dissipating like smoke in the morning sun. As the dust settled, Gojo looked across the battlefield, not with triumph, but with solemn gratitude. This victory, he said softly, is ours together. But the true dawn is the hope we carry forward. The city began to breathe again, life returning to shattered streets and broken dreams, but the scars remained, reminders of the cost of redemption. Gojo turned toward his friends, his voice gentle but unwavering. We are not gods, nor villains. We are guardians of a fragile light. And as long as we stand, that light will never fade. As the sun rose, bathing the world in warm embrace, the sorcerers knew their journey was far from over. But this dawn belonged to hope. And so concludes the epic saga of a sorcerer once hailed as a god, who walked the razor's edge between salvation and ruin. Gojo Satoru's journey from unmatched power to humbling redemption reminds us that even the greatest can fall, and rise again when fueled by the courage to change. The battles were fierce, friendships forged and tested, and through it all, the light of hope endured, fragile, yes, but unbreakable. Thank you for joining this tale of shadows, strength, and the unyielding spirit of those who protect the world from darkness. If this story stirred your soul, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And for more thrilling fan stories, don't miss our solo leveling fan story, available now on this channel. Visit the channel and dive into that world next. Until next time, keep the light alive.